Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marianne Highland, and I'm the Dean of the Robert B. Willemstad School of Business here at Adelphi University. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all to one of our Dawn Center speaker events. Today's topic is innovations in information technology. And this session is going to be moderated by Professor Joseph Sheldrick. Professor Sheldrick is an adjunct professor here at Adelphi. He's been teaching undergraduate and graduate courses in the decision sciences and management departments at Adelphi for over 20 years. Me too, Joe. We go back a long way here at Adelphi, huh?
Yeah.
He has extensive business experience in senior positions in major domestic and international corporations. This includes being the CIO of a major pension company and the COO of a major international book publisher. He's the founder and CEO of a private consulting firm specializing in the use of information technology to support corporate strategy and growth. He holds a bachelor's degree in accounting and economics from CUNY and master's degrees in human resource management and management from Adelphi. Thank you so much, Professor Sheldrick, for serving as our moderator today. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Marianne. We are fortunate to have two great panelists today. They will share their insights on information technology and how it can be used to help our corporate growth and strategy. Our first speaker is Mr. John Borst. He is a globally experienced technology leader whose 40-year career extends across multiple industries. He has led technology teams and projects spanning 6 continents. That's a lot of countries, too. Okay. His duties have taken him to over 40 of these countries. After a 4-year stint in the U.S. Marine Corps, he earned a bachelor's in business administration from Adelphi. So he's one of our homegrown success stories. Our next speaker, Mr. Jared Meraz. He is an executive director at Morgan Stanley, leading a global network operations and data analytics team. He has 30 years of experience in different technology, ranging from systems management, network operations, network architecture, and infrastructure. He holds a bachelor's degree in English from Binghamton University and a master's degree in business analytics from Adelphi University. Another homegrown success story. Before we start our discussion today, I'd like to remind the audience that the panelists are speaking as industry experts, and they are not representing their current employers. Having said that, let's get started. John, would you like to give us some background on your experience with
the recent experience, or going back the full since college?
Less than 10 minutes.
All right. So then I think it's worth saying that, as mentioned, I graduated from Adelphi. I started going for a business degree with finance, took a computer course, decided I want to get a double concentration, graduated and wanted to put the two of them together, and was told, well, really, you got to decide. You're a programmer or you're a financial analyst. You can't be both. And it turned out I could get both. I got an entry-level position through a network connection at E.F. Hutton, which is an investment bank on Wall Street, or was at the time. I was there for 3 years. I was recruited from there to establish the IT audit function at Intercontinental Hotels Group, a global hotel chain. And that's where the 6 continents comes, because I was interested in international business and travel. All right, so then I was there for 12 years and moved from audit into a divisional IT role. When I left, I got a job as a head of IT for a European company, Media Communications, where I was global head of IT, and that was truly a global company. I returned to the United States, joined as enterprise head of IT for Synveo, which was a Fortune 1000 manufacturing industry company. That takes me today.
Hey, thanks, John. Jared, you like to give us a little background on yourself and your company?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to speak with everyone today. Right. So in my current role, right. So I do head up a network operations for a relatively large portion of the network. And I also head up a data analytics organization. My career started back in the early 90s, working at a nuclear waste cleanup facility in upstate Western New York, doing PC server work. After graduating college, I got recruited by Payne Weber specifically to work in the network operations center there. Interesting story. Before then, I had never done anything with networking. I was a desktop server person. Did that for a few years, moved on to a couple other financials, and then I ended up in the early 2000s working at an ISP, building internet services in and around Manhattan, and then across the country, and then into Paris and London. From there, I went to another carrier, a communications division of Con Edison, where I engineered and built the very first Metro Ethernet network in New York City. After that, I moved back into finance, heading up the network operations at the ISE, which is a electronic options exchange, which is now owned by NASDAQ. And then after the ISE, I ended up in my current role. So yeah, so I've been, my career has spanned, various networking and analytic technologies for quite some time.
Very good. John, what role does IT play in an organization, and why is it important? Why is IT important in any organization?
Well, it basically is the keeper of the records, enables the business, the record keeping, the security. It allows the company to do processes more quickly and reliably. At its heart.
And when you say record keeping, you're talking about, besides finance, you're talking about inventory and everything else we have to keep records about.
Right. IT, largely the computers in IT started in the back office, financial systems, payroll. And up until not many years ago, particularly if you look at hospitality, you could go into a company that only had computers in the finance department and for payroll. Since then, it's been used for all called it the front, people touching aspects, computers on every one desk. All that data and input has to be stored, whether it's marketing data, sales data, inventory management. It's basically integral to everything we do today.
Jared, in your organization and your experience?
Yeah, so in the organizations I've worked for, my experience is strictly within IT, and either the firm itself was a technology-based organization like an ISP or a carrier where the product itself is technology, or in my current role or previous roles where the technology itself was the enabler of the business. I'm sure everyone's heard of various electronic exchanges or brokerages. You see the commercials on TV all the time. These are technology companies that are enabling businesses and individuals to invest and do what they need to do financially. So from my perspective, especially now as compared to 30 some years ago, it's technology and IT is at the forefront of everything that medium to large businesses are doing, even right down to our phones. If you think about it, right, everyone has phones, and the power of that technology is higher than any of the machines we ran 30 years ago. So I think it's absolutely vital to the success of any firm at this point.
Many times we're called the managers of change. In other words, we are either taking something that's done manually and automating it, or something that's already automated, okay, and making it better or adapting new technology. John, can you give me an example of a project that you successfully completed as a manager of change? Yeah, and what approach did you take, and what were the results, and how do you measure the outcome of the change? We all know IT is not cheap, and we have to measure outcome and success. What's been your experiences in this area?
All right, well, I see three parts to that answer. The probably largest, most high profile change management project was I was head of the IT project, the IT portion of a project for the Euro currency conversion in Europe for Intercontinental Hotels Group. So there, even though it's 12 countries across Europe, it impacted the financial systems and the storage of currency. It was like 350 different systems that were storing currency data. And though it was a phased approach, basically we had to, actually I petitioned for and got a public relations function onto the project, which I felt and certainly proved to be integral, because you had to sell this. You had to communicate to the customers, the hotel guests, you had your customers, which are the people that work in hotels. Top management had to understand the importance, and the people on the project. It wasn't just we have to change systems in-house. A lot of it was working with various vendors to get their systems to be able to handle the Euro currency, which was a two-step. First, they had to recognize it as a secondary. There was a phase in, and then on the D-Day, let's say January 1st, 99, they had to convert all at once. It's considered the largest currency change project in the world. That was unique in the fact that sometimes you have projects that fail, they fail for a number of reasons. One big one is they run behind. And that was a prime example of one where whatever you do, you can't be late, because there is no do it tomorrow. I find that what gets in the way is when the two things. One is the project is not planned, analyzed, thought out. What are the collateral items that are impact or identified? As mentioned, it took me an analysis to identify 350 different systems. Some projects they scope and they budget it, and they've left things out. And as you move the project forward, you discover that, okay, we put the new system out on, say, this computer, and it's running fine. We didn't allow for the fact that it would generate 30% additional data that therefore is causing another system that stores the data to overfill.
In the system that you're talking about, how did you measure its success? Came in on time, it came in under budget, it saved the company money. How did you measure success?
Well, going into it, you've identified how long it's going to take. You've identified what it's going to cost. You should have identified a number of different, 5, depending on the size, 5, 10, 20 critical success factors. Failure is, in some cases, you have failure where the whole thing just goes and they scrap it and they don't do it. Failure can also be the fact that you ran over budget, you took too long, or when it's done, you've only achieved a portion of those critical success factors.
Jared, any comments or any experiences you've had on this area?
Yeah, I mean, so, to kind of touch on a few things, right? So in terms of, projects, again, I've had to execute or manage, plan, develop hundreds, thousands of IT projects now over the years. There have been a few highlights. I think, John, I love the currency conversion. If you're, we're all of the same age. If you're looking at other fun ones that were no fail, were like the conversion from fractions to decimals in the stock exchange in the Americas back in the late 90s, or the moving to trading, after hours trading, right? These are massive changes in certain things that may seem trivial on its face, but from a technology perspective are no fail. We have, when we talk about failure in my space, though, there's this I do have most of my projects are all no fail, but we measure failure on service impact to our clients, right? So meaning whether it's an internet client or an exchange client, or when you're selling the technology service, you can have many different types of clients, right? So outages are a big part of our measure of success. Did you prevent an outage? Did you create an outage, et cetera? In terms of how we manage, say, projects and how we manage project success, one thing that we find very important nowadays is the agile methodology, and that way of working through projects, getting people together. Obviously, teamwork is a very important part to succeeding. And we do, from a success and failure measurement perspective, from a project basis, we usually find it there in terms of delivering as expected on time, to requirements, and then when it comes to failures or anything that need to be improved upon, the natural process within the agile methodology for continual improvement, for the idea of going back and reviewing what happened that didn't go so well in the last sprint, or the last effort of work that can be improved upon immediately into the next. So there's a lot of areas in this where we can talk about success and failure of IT projects and deployments. I do have, there's always this big one. One of the stories I always bring up, one of the little anecdotes, when I interview folks for roles in networking, I usually ask everybody, if you get to a certain point with me, if they could describe to me the largest network failure that they were ever a part of, or the largest failure they've ever been a part of, and how they handled it. Interestingly, folks who have been in this industry or been working for a long time, know what they're doing, can tell you exactly one. Mine was December 27th, 2004. I don't even have to look that up. That date is burned into my brain. It was a 27-hour network outage, and I remember where I was when I got the call, what I was doing, what the weather was like, the whole 9 yards. So failure is very impactful in IT in terms of what you learn from it, and how you can improve, and what you can do to prevent, or how to just kind of move forward, right? No one learns anything by being successful. You really learn by making mistakes.
John, what do you think we learned the most from failure? How do we take failure and make sure we don't repeat it? And what do we learn from failure the most? Okay, Bernie?
Well, to learn from it, you have to identify it and document it and review it after the fact, which goes, normally projects have lessons learned reports. Frequently what I see is, though, by the time a project's done, everyone's eager to go off somewhere else, and the time is not spent to digest what you just completed and to study these things.
What do we learn from successful projects?
I would say that things go well and poorly throughout the process, and every step you're learning from it. Don't do this, do that.
Jared, was there any case where you used innovation to enhance IT? Innovation is all over today. Every time we turn around, there's a new innovation coming out.
Yeah.
It's either a new type of technology or a new application of the technology. Okay.
Yeah.
What have you, what difficulties have you had to implement these invitations and technology?
Sure. So innovation is a very interesting and a buzzword in IT, because everyone's innovating or trying to innovate a lot, or even if they don't think they are, they are. In terms of one thing that I did, or one of the projects, there's been a lot of projects where I've been trying to innovate, but the one more recent, not too long ago, but so I helped develop or spearheaded the development of a monitoring application or monitoring tool that was used to provide, it does provide very detailed performance analysis across a global network, providing data about how flows are performing, specifically the network side, right? So I'm looking at hardware, circuitry, performance and latency and things like that usually very difficult to monitor in a large network. But we did it in a way that would not be considered typical, right? So typically in IT, you have monitoring tools that look at the health of devices, the health of servers, using various ways to poll them. What's your CPU utilization? How busy are your interfaces? Are you dropping packets? Things like that. The innovation that I came up with and what the teams and I put together was the usage of real-time network packet flows across those networks. So picking up network flows and then monitoring them in real time and creating alerts and other various health checks or indicators of network performance using live real-time data. At the time when we did it, the devices we were using, these are maybe packet capture or sniffer devices, were not typically used in this fashion. So in the days before, if you had a problem that needed to be investigated, someone would say, oh, well, let me put a sniffer on that, and if it happens again, we'll see what it was. And my thought was, well, why would you do that? Just leave it running all the time. Just keep it on. Like it's passive. It's on the side of the network. It's not, it doesn't cause any impact. Just let it run. And develop the ability to store as much data as you can for a certain amount of time. Do analysis on that data, and do things in a proactive way. At the time when we did this, it was like the dream. It was, oh, how can we do this in real time? How can we do this faster? And so it was innovative, and now it's a part of everything. That concept, I'm not going to take credit because this is, a huge networking and IT field, but it's a big part of how people monitor nowadays, and how people, like you look in clouds, you look at all the different network infrastructures that are out there. They depend a lot on real-time flow-based analytics, which when I was first doing it, did not exist. So it was pretty disruptive in my my operational space, which is great. So yeah, and I think that the key to this when it comes to innovation is, especially when we look at folks that are just getting started in this or don't have decades of technology experience behind them, is to realize that it's all about what you can create in your own mind. Your creativity is what can drive innovation. And no idea is too small or too insignificant. You can make massive changes with just a simple idea on how to make things better, especially in IT, because there's plenty of opportunity.
John, any experiences with IT innovation and implementing it?
Yeah, I like that topic because there are, if you look at innovation as being you're coming up with new ideas for a product or improving processes. And I always like to study and look around and see things that others didn't. And they can be small and not exciting, or they can be big. When I was with Inchcape Shipping Services, the maritime company that was global, with a 2 billion cash flow, however, they were shallow and they're moderate-sized organization. So 2 billion for them was a lot of money. And I just saw that it was taking them a while to get the money due in from the customers. partly because they had manual procedures, someone in China had to do something and then bring it to somebody in Singapore. There was about 7 regional centers, and then it would have to come in to the center before it was finally done. And I came up with a piece of software that we could deploy out into the field that the end result was we took 4.5 days of average, we improved cash flow by 4.5 days, which was about $25 million. Now that's something that I saw and proposed. But sometimes it's like not even that sexy. You see all these fax machines and all these other things around offices, and you wonder why they're all there. And it's because nobody's job is to look at all the fax machines and the printers. And then you do a little math and you realize we're paying all this money for these machines that aren't being used. I can get brand new machines that what we need for far less money. And that became, $1.5 million savings. But it's just seeing something others don't.
Right.
Looking for the opportunities for improvement.
Jared, am I correct in saying that scalability is a significant challenge in your area?
Yes, absolutely. Networking in particular is a game of it's all about scale. If we think about, so think about so when I first started in networking, we were talking about things like X.25, and then you're looking at various modems, various baud rates, 1200, 2400, 9600. This is bits per second of bandwidth. I think the greatest innovation was when 64K modems came out. We thought it was, oh my goodness, we're going so fast. If you look at today in most financials, I'm not speaking about anyone in particular, you will find typically networking links upwards of multiple hundreds of gigs a second for various backbones. So, the exchanges or, some of the big, the big banks, they have, global connectivity, these very, very large pipes. That used to be like where the big pipes were. Now, internet, cloud, content service providers, and the various remote technologies and everyone's, society's usage of them has driven capacity to insane levels, to where, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, the big players have just immense amounts of network capacity. And it continues to grow based specifically on everyone's demand, which it's an excessive amount. And in the networking space, it really is a game of staying ahead of demand. Like every firm I've been in has some method of capacity planning and forecasting and attempting to stay 40 to 80% ahead of where we think the network traffic is going to be, because you don't know if one day all of a sudden your network will be saturated and then you'll have a service impacting event. So scale in my space is absolutely paramount to success, and places that fail as firms and as organizations do so primarily, and again in this space, due to lack of understanding of scale and capacity across network infrastructures.
What about Wi-Fi versus cable and wire? Where do you see the growth?
So as wireless becomes more and more on par bandwidth wise with wired connectivity, we'll see a movement away, as we have for years now, towards additional wireless connectivity. It is still limited. There will always be wired connectivity for backbones and large bandwidth, low latency applications. But again, this is where we're talking about networking physics comes into play. I don't know how many folks, maybe many folks on the Zoom know that the speed of light is different in a vacuum versus over air versus in glass, and majority of the network connectivity in the world is done over fiber optic glass underground or in aerials. It's a lot faster if you can get that over the air. So one of the innovations that's happening in that space is this thing called hollow core fiber, where you have glass with a air in the middle to increase the speed of light, if you will, for that, to move things faster. So wireless is innovating and getting closer, but again, I'll say this, from a consumer perspective, right? All wireless is where the world's going, because from convenience factor, it works better, it's easier. It does have its issues, obviously, but from a backbone capacity perspective, it'll be on wires. It'll have to be.
Is data more secure on wire or wireless?
That's another very interesting idea, because you can argue both. I'm a believer in wired security because it's easier to detect disruptions in said wired network. There's also, depending on which technology you're looking at, it may be easier from a technology perspective to intercept the traffic. Wireless, Wi-Fi, and also say 5G and the various handheld wireless signaling is also very easy to pick up. And if you have the right software, easy to decode. So it is also inherently, less secure. There are firms out there that can provide, wireless encryption, if you will. There's plenty of encryption out there as well, but different technologies to prevent interception of transmissions on wireless. But yeah, you could effectively argue both sides of that. I'm very firmly in the wired camp. Maybe it's because I can see it and touch it, and if it gets intercepted, I can unplug it. Maybe it's an older way of thinking, but yeah, that's where my head is.
Thank you, John. John, what skills do students need to be IT specialists? And before you answer that, I'd like to note that Jared's undergraduate degree is in English. John, yours is in business administration, and mine's in accounting and finance. So how did we wind up here?
Well, I say those are good things, because in my experience, I would say what's really in demand now are people that have critical thinking skills, can collaborate, can team, have business acumen. So if you come in very technical and maintain just the technical side of things, you're limited in how you can interact with other people and also pitch or propose what you're wanting to do, because you don't understand the accounting side or the finance side. So I've just found that with my audit background, that kind of established a foundation of control. And okay, every system, it's input, processing, update, and these things should exist. And every periodically something new comes around and they say, oh, the old roles, everything that happened before doesn't apply anymore, but it still does. The names change, the technology changes, but the basics don't. So, to have an understanding of the frameworks, such as cybersecurity, where I'm going to go out and develop stuff, but I have to factor into that it has to be protected from a cyber perspective. So that's why it's easy to talk to the technical skills to be successful in IT. I'm going to, if you were going on an interview with someone out of college, I don't necessarily would pitch that I know, say, Java, if I didn't know they were looking for somebody with Java. I would pitch the fact that I understand these different languages, enjoyed learning them, and expect to be going forward using my knowledge of the proper framework for doing these things. The other thing I would add to this is, and partly because I've had project management for most of my career, nonstop, is to having knowledge and some kind of foundation and skills in project management would be an excellent add. And that means not just knowing how to use, say, Microsoft's project, not just having the certification, but truly knowing it. In my experience, most everyone will say they can project manage, but very few truly can.
Jared, what about your thoughts on this?
So yeah, I mean, a couple of things. So yeah, I have a degree in English, literature and rhetoric. So I learned how to read and talk. And I had a minor in computer science, and I had lots of internships in technology. And when I was in middle school and high school, I spent my free time building my own computers and doing very nerdy things. So that may give you all some insight. When I graduated, I was hired out of school by PaineWebber. They interviewed 300 students from Binghamton, and they took 16 of us for second or final round interviews in New Jersey, and only 2 of us got jobs. When I spoke with the recruiter and the hiring manager after I had started, I said, well, what was it about me? Why was I just wanted to understand. And they said, quite frankly, it was because of my English degree. It was because they knew that and we're talking 1997, 1998, technology at the time, there used to be a kind of a phrase that people would say, like in business, they would say, oh, tell it to me in English. I don't want to hear your techno babble or techno jargon, right? You have to be able to tell me in English. And actually, I kind of, when I got my degree, that was part of my plan. I recognized that there was the gap in communication between, and hopefully folks don't take this the wrong way, but the older generation at that time, and Gen X, when we were first getting into business, that somebody needed to explain it to them in English. And that was the big driver for them, that they saw a person who could do the work and talk about it, could write emails, do presentations, public speaking, was comfortable being an employee, being someone who could be in the environment. I value, as a manager, hiring manager, team leader, I value diversity of experience and background almost above all else. Technology can be taught, skills can be picked up very easily, but people's experience and where they're from and what they've lived, it weighs a lot more on me than other things. So one example, in a previous role, and this person still works for me today, there was an individual during the economic downturn in 2007, 2008, who was an executive chef, an executive pastry chef, actually. And they could no longer find work in that space because obviously it was drying up with the recession. Went back to school and he got his like a certificate in networking. And I interviewed him for a network operations job, like in a NOC, and he got the job. And when I had to go explain to my supervisor why I was hiring a chef into a NOC role, I said, well, have you ever run a kitchen? Do you know what it's like to be an executive chef in a kitchen? Well, I'm sure the pressure there is high, if not higher than what it's like in our NOC during the day. So the individual can handle the rigors of that job, and we'll teach the tech. That's easy. That's the easy part. It's the character of the person and diversity of the background that is important. So it's a lesson I learned early on when I got out of school, and the opportunity I was given, and I try to pass that along in every role I've been in. And it's something I love to stress with all students and everyone that we speak to. And you can't just be one thing. You have to be well-rounded.
Yeah, that brings up the topic of they always think of IT specialists, but there's a job out there called business analyst. And he takes she takes the requirements of a user, which to the technology, the requirements are very gibberish. And just like the user listens to the technician and their vocabulary is very gibberish, and words that they use, words they don't understand. And definitely the business analyst sort of try to pull them together. Does that job still exist in your community?
Well, I could speak to, so thanks for raising that. Yes, that is pretty much my current life, and it has been that for many years now. Where yes, to provide a proper service to a client who needs a solution, but doesn't need to know how you got there from a technology perspective, this role is absolutely vital. And yes, it exists everywhere, and you have technologists that play that role. You have project managers and team leaders who play that role. It's something that I do as a key part of my function, and has been for many years. And if we'll have a moment of humor, I would like to reference 1999's classic Office Space, where there's the one individual whose only job is to take the requirements from the customer to the engineers. And he's asked, "Is that all you do?" "Yeah, I'm a people person."
John, have you run into the business analyst in your career?
Yeah, they've been integral throughout any large project or ongoing development or support of large systems. You have them. In one instance, I had, they would be regional, one in Singapore, one in South America, one in London, doing just that. I would add that they didn't come into it. It was through other channels. They ended up there. They didn't go to school to be a business analyst. And I would agree with Jared that they had good interpersonal skills, which you have people like them, and therefore they were more amenable to cooperating. And
So what basic skills, someone who wants to be an IT specialist, what basic skills do you think that they need? Communications, of course.
Where I noticed the difference, I suppose, is, IT is probably still an area where you can not go to school, let's say out of high school, and work your way up to a senior role, or you can go via the education university. But where it would stand out later on is it's the other things you learn in university and making decisions beyond just technology that show up later. I would see it when I would be interacting with someone that was not from that background, that you would hit walls on occasion where you would try and articulate what needed to be done, and you could see they couldn't get it, and you could appreciate that if you had gone to university, you would understand.
Are there any particular software skills you think that a student should be focusing on?
I don't have any specific one, I would say. They're going to change. I see the universities already teaching or having sessions on the big ones. I don't have one that I would go out beyond that and say. I'll defer to Jared on that one.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, in my area, there's a ton. I think from a IT generalist perspective, I would say, obviously, you got to know all of your various productivity tools, of course. It does matter in terms of where you're going to specialize and what sort of things you're going to do. But the one thing I will say that is becoming more and more important that people often overlook, or maybe they're a bit nervous about, or don't want to know how to get started in, is programming languages. Specifically, Python in particular is one that is starting to and has already enhanced or driven a lot of innovation in the IT space in areas outside of just programming or web development. Python is used in analytics. Python is used even just for simple financial analysis. And if you have a large data set that you need to do analytics on, it's one thing how many folks here have tried to load a 4 million row spreadsheet into Excel, right? There used to be, it crashes, it doesn't work, it won't say, like, it's just impossible. But a 4 million row table into Python with the right skills is easily manageable. And, you know, the amount of data that you can get out of that by just understanding how to work within Python and that one in particular, that language, it can open up opportunities and pathways for efficiencies and for, you know, better data analytics straight away, right? So simple things like that. And I think that that gets missed a lot, that folks are not necessarily willing to start learning it because maybe they think they can't, they don't know how, or yeah, I think folks need to remember that you can, it can be done. And it is important, and it is really starting to pick up, especially in my industry. Other than that, you're really looking at very technically specific things, right? So if you're in networking, you know, you have to learn your, you know, all your basic networking protocols, but then you have to look at, you know, cloud networking and, you know, how do clouds interact? What is a cloud? You know, what various, you know, the competing cloud vendors, like which one's better than the others? There's so many different software packages out there. I mean, forget, if you want to be a data engineer, there's hundreds of packages, right? And which one is the best? Which one's the standard? Which one is each firm using? You don't know. It is difficult. So, yeah.
Well,
so
your data analytics team, what language, what software are they using?
So we do everything in Python and SQL. Yeah, those are your two biggies. You got to know how to work through a database using SQL. You have to understand relational databases and table structures, and Python. We do most of our non-production analytics in Jupyter Notebooks. We do our production analytics outside of that. We use other software packages. I've seen SAS Jump is a very big one. Also, the very some of the BI tools out there now, like Tableau, is very powerful. You can do a lot of great work with Tableau if you have enough RAM. That's the other thing. Again, if you have a large data set, it will struggle. Power BI, that's Microsoft's product. They also do a good job. You can also write your own. I've worked with tools that people just write within Python and Java, you know, for the developer folks that use Java. But yeah, it's a lot of Python. It's everywhere. Yeah, not as much R in my space right now, but a lot of Python.
Yeah, it's my understanding that Amazon and AWS services uses Python.
Yep, it's everywhere. Yeah. I had a developer put together a Python to Java API for the Python half of one of my teams, because they didn't want to deal with Java. Like, it was just silly. So, you know, because they just want to stay in Python. You know, that's stuff like that happens, right? Like, but that's when you talk about innovation, that's, you know, these are the ideas that people have. It's simple and small, but it's very disruptive in a lot of these spaces.
Yeah, and one of the things is you have to keep up with the technology, new languages, but always remember there will be we don't like to call them old systems, like to call them legacy systems. So, you know, it's very hard to get a budget to convert a system, you know, with no new functionality. So knowing the old and the new is always helpful.
That's right. There's a lot of good YouTube videos on Fortran.
Fortran, assembly language.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
John, what advice would you give our students on how to get connected with your industry or any industry?
Well, coming out of, I mean, New York is a great metro area if people are planning on staying here, because you have and even if you don't want to be an IT auditor, and I'm thinking about organizations where, yes, after many years you can get in. I'm talking about out of college, Information Systems Audit and Control Association. I started as an auditor, but I was involved with them through most of my career, because again, you know, and they are, given the large organizations in New York City, it has to be a larger organization to have an internal audit function. You go to meetings where these people are seated across all the top companies in the city or in Long Island. So if you're networking for the first job or other jobs, I think that comes out to me as an excellent place. Um, If by chance you have students that are from England or going back to England, the British Computer Society is fabulous there, but not so much in the US. And that's what I would leave it with.
Jared, what about your
Yeah.
suggestions?
So to get into my industry, and there's two things that I will call out quite specifically, and they're pretty high level, but I mean, there's a lot of, if you're just looking for jobs, obviously there's a lot of websites that have links and stuff, but like my firm's website in particular has some fantastic resources for students and how to get obviously connected to us. But it gives a great background and insight on what it takes and what's required, and the various opportunities that are out there globally, and the sort of resources that are available for students coming up to get into the industry. I think, though, one of the most important things, which may seem less important, but I assure you is more important now than ever, even after the pandemic, truly is the personal communication and the interactions between people. So job fairs. I know a lot of people sometimes think that it's not important to go to, say, job fairs, or if companies show up to a campus and do like recruiting events. It is vitally important. The human interaction and the personal connections that are made at these events, or at any time you can have a personal conversation with someone in the industry, does go a long way to help get individuals connected into the industry and start getting into work in a career. It can't be stressed enough. I do know that, and I deal with it now as well, that there is a hybrid work environment, there is remote, there is in person, and every company has different requirements. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for a career, if you're looking for a way to to really make it in this industry, you still need to have a personal connection. If you're in my field and you need a job done, a very say it's like a 3-month development thing, and you don't really care about, you can contract it out to a virtual team anywhere in the world. Great, wonderful. But if you want to get into being a part of a career, you have to have that personal connection with people.
Speakers, we have a few questions from the students. One is from where can one without an IT background be recommended to start from the impactful and positive ideas through IT? Not too sure what let me repeat it. Where can one without an IT background be recommended to start? Where can they be recommended to start so they can have a positive idea through IT? So I guess the question is basically, if I don't have an IT background, where should I start?
That's great. Well, from my perspective, that's a great question. I think everyone needs to remember as well that even if you don't have an IT background, if you look around your life, we're surrounded by IT, and everyone, if you have an iPhone or an Android or any sort of advanced technical device, we all have them. This is an IT background, right? If you understand how they work, that's a background that gets you started. How do you get involved? I will say it is very difficult to jump into my field without at least some bit of technical background. I think from it does begin with an educational perspective. You don't necessarily have to have a technical degree to get into IT. As I said, I have an English degree. You have to be very open to opportunities. I think that one thing that folks need to remember is you need to be willing to put the work in. It's hard. It's a tough one. Again, speaking specifically to my industry, you do need to have something as like a starting point, a bit of experience or education to show that you can, do the work at a certain level. But yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, there's a response from one of the students that said that they recommend LinkedIn to see. get some information.
Yeah, there's a lot of learning opportunities online now as well. That's one of the good things about having these large technology resources, is that there are plenty of free or low cost ways to learn these technologies to get you started, to see if there's an interest. You can learn multiple programming languages for free on various websites and things like that. So yes, that there are ways to get, if you want to get into it, that's how you would get started for sure.
Hey, we have a few minutes left, but one more question and then a closing question. One of the questions from the students is, what measures should we take to address the growing concerns of cyber threats? Anybody want to throw some good ideas into that? The growing concerns. What measures should we take?
John, do you have anything you want to pitch on that one?
Well, I as I mentioned before, is fact in, having a framework that incorporates controls for cyber in your work. In the old days, you would have said, basic financial accounting controls. Now it kind of goes to the cyber side of it.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, from just at a high level, recognize that there are infinitely more bad actors in the world today than there were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and that everyone needs to be skeptical about
ngày
everything.
bắt đầu chiều chiều.
So it's not yes, it's out there. Everyone needs to be, obviously cognizant and careful and aware, and feels like common sense, but yeah, it's a lot.
Okay, and our final question. What should the audience take away from today's session? What's the one thing that they should really take away? We always ask, what did you get out of it? We talked about a lot of things, but what's the keynote? What's the one thing you think the audience should take away from today's session? John?
I would say, as before, you search out opportunities for improvement to include improve processes. You come up with new products. The technology comes later. The technology is integral to doing it, but frequently, in my experience, people come up and, they come up with the sexy thing, and then they figure out what they're going to do with it. You start with the solution, like first we need an AS400 computer, let's say, because I know that and I love them. And what was your problem now? Well, let me figure out how to put it into what I've decided. It goes first to identifying what the needs are and then how to best resource and fulfill them.
Jarrett, your thoughts on that?
Yep. No, I definitely agree with that sentiment for sure. You don't want to be the solution in search of a problem. I think the one big takeaway I want to make sure everyone walks away with today is remembering that the one constant in IT is change, right? It's always changing. Do remember that tomorrow someone may have a crazy idea, or even today, that's going to revolutionize the world, even the workplace, or how we communicate. Think of how quickly did folks jump onto ChatGPT. That's now the most revolutionary thing. The day before, no one saw it coming. What's it going to be tomorrow? We don't know. Seek out the work that no one wants to do. Seek out opportunities that, find your place, and know that if you put the time and work in, you can be successful, can make it in this field. It is a very large field, but it's also quite small. Remember that again, you don't want to burn bridges. You want to make sure you maintain good, positive relationships with individuals, especially in business and in this field. And it is always changing.
Yep, the only thing constant is change.
It's right.
Thank you, speakers, for your insights. Thank you, audience, for joining us today. I want to end the session with an announcement. Our next Dawn Center Speakers Series events will take place in the fall of 2023. We hope you join us for the event. Thank you for everyone, and have a good day. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Mary
Thank
Ann.
you, everyone. Appreciate your time and attention.
Thank you.